All right, hello everyone. My name is Sarah McAnulty. I run the Skype of Scientists program, and today we are theoretically going to be talking about Triceratops, but our scientist is not here yet, so I'm just going to go over some housekeeping stuff in the meantime. So first things first, we don't want to go forward with any science communication content whatsoever this week without addressing what is going on and has been going on for years in our country with the violence against Black people. There's a couple things we'd like to draw your attention to. So on Instagram and Twitter, there's an account that we think you all should be following. It's called Black AF in STEM. It's co-founded by one of Skype of Scientists board of director members, Corinne Newsom, who is just the best. Along with all of the other people who are working on that project with her. So check that out on Twitter and Instagram. Also, there's been a lot of really wonderful press around what Karina and others have been putting together this week called Black Birders Week. Today is the last day of Black Birders Week. And so we hope you check that out. There's a lot of really cool stuff going on about Black scientists sharing their experiences working in STEM. The other thing that you should be aware of is that you should be considering how to donate to social justice organizations this week. The National Bail Fund is a great choice. But there are a lot of other really cool organizations doing good work, including Black AF and STEM. They're going to be going forward with a lot of good stuff in the future, and so they could also use your support. The next thing that I just recently learned about this week is called Campaign Zero. They're a group that is focused on looking at basically like what works, data backed, in terms of police brutality. They have done a lot of research and looked at a lot of the existing research on what of these things that we all think may work. Like, for example, you may have heard about body cameras being put into place in a lot of places. And it turns out that even though it changes the attitude sometimes along with training of police officers, that actually it doesn't really change the number of Black people that are killed in that precinct. And so while it's good to change attitudes, it's not really enough. And so they're looking at things that actually do affect change in these places. And one of the things that does is reforming police unions. So anyway, check out Campaign Zero. They've got a lot more than that to discuss. And so we hope you check that out. The next thing is that you can read some books. There's some books for adults that I personally can recommend. One being How to Be an Anti-Racist. It is informative, but also just like a great read. Like, it's a page turner in my opinion. And so you want to talk about race is also phenomenal. So much great information that you can use to arm yourself to be a better ally if you are not a Black person yourself. For teenagers, I can personally recommend The Hate You Give and On the Come Up by the same author, Angie Thomas. These books are narratives. They're teen novels, and they are great. They're basically, the more we can expose ourselves to the stories of Black people, the better we can. These are both fiction, of course, but they're phenomenal and would really recommend them to any teenagers or preteens that you have at home. But if you have any questions about the Skype of Scientists program broadly, I'm happy to answer those now. If you have any questions about squid, I can answer those too. I know that's not what you came here for today, but we can do that. Also, additionally, we are this month from June 1st to 19th, partnered with a group called Noble Step. They're a group that specifically is a professional society for queer scientists. And so they're partnered with us, putting out only queer scientist featured content for the first 3 weeks of June. Hello.
Yeah, sorry, I've had major technical issues all morning, so just been trying to figure that out. So I'm Sophie Cajune, and right now I'm an undergrad at Montana State University. And I am doing a work study and at the Museum of the Rockies, which is, it has like a ton of different museum things, a lot of history, but their main thing is dinosaurs. And right now I'm studying Triceratops, specifically a certain specimen. It's like a juvenile Triceratops. It's one of the smallest Triceratops specimens ever found. And so a lot of what I'm doing is kind of figuring out, how do I explain this? Figuring out how Triceratops developed throughout growth, figuring out like how they are related in like a family tree to other Chasmosaurians, which are the genus, I guess, of dinosaur that they're in. And so right now I've just been working on that research. And yeah, I've wanted to be a paleontologist since I was really, really young. So this is kind of like a dream come true for me. And yeah, I'm really happy to be with you guys here today to answer any questions.
Awesome, thank you. So the first question we have is, how did you get to be involved in research so early? Like, what was your path to going from a kid who thought dinosaurs were awesome and wanted to be a paleontologist to where you are right now?
So when I was still in high school, I live in Livingston, which is just across. It's a few minutes from Bozeman, where the museum is. So I really wanted to become involved in the museum. So I just went straight to the top and I emailed the curator of paleontology there, Dr. John Scannella, who also works on Triceratops. And I literally just emailed him and I went, "Hi, I'm Sophie. I would love to become more involved in paleontology at the museum. What can I do to take those like first steps on my way to becoming a researcher?" And he helped me get set up as a volunteer there. So I worked for about a year and a half volunteering in the Seibel Dinosaur Complex. And there I would like talk to people who came into the museum and I would answer their questions about the huge displays. We have like a huge Triceratops display, a huge T-Rex display, all these things. And so I would just answer their questions, teach them more. And so I did that again for about a year. And then when I finally decided to go to college at MSU, I had the opportunity to do a work study under Amy Atwater, who is the collections manager of paleontology. So for a long time, for what I've been doing for the past year is working with her in the collections, which is where we have all of the fossils. We have the largest collection of Triceratops, I think, in the world. And through her, I like learned more about fossil preparation, measuring fossils, cataloging them so that we know where they are in the museum. And through her, I went back and worked with Dr. John Scannella, who I originally had emailed. And now me and him are working on a research paper on the little baby Triceratops that we have. So yeah.
That's awesome. So how many years have you been working with the museum now?
I volunteered I think my junior and senior year of high school, and then I've just been doing the research and the work study this past year. So I'm still like early on in the game, but yeah, it's so fun.
Very cool. So our next question is, why do you think Triceratops are so cool and worth studying?
Well, again, we have the largest collection of Triceratops in the world at the museum, but even though Triceratops is one of the most common dinosaurs that we find so many in the Hell Creek Formation, which is in eastern Montana, South Dakota, that whole area. We have found relatively few that are like baby specimens or juvenile specimens. And especially at the level that the size of the skull that I'm working on is, I think it's either the second smallest skull or one of the very smallest. So we really don't know that much about their early life and their early development. We've never found a Triceratops egg. We don't know if their horns were there when they were born or if they were attached when they were born. So what I'm really trying to do is kind of gain a better understanding of exactly what's going on right after a Triceratops is hatched and is starting to develop into, the classic huge frill, huge horns, right? That developmental stage.
That's awesome. So, okay, how big is a baby Ceratops? Like when they first hatch, ballpark, how big are we talking?
Oh man, see, that's one of those questions that we're trying to answer. The smallest skull we've ever found it's at the university, or wait, I think it's in Berkeley, and it's about that big. That's the size of the skull, and we think that it could have been even smaller right when it first hatched. The one that I'm studying is about that big, the skull is. So, I mean, they weren't tiny, but compared to the multi-ton adult that they eventually grew into, they were very small. Yeah.
That's so cool. Stephanie would like to know, how many species of dinosaurs have we discovered?
Ooh, so that's a really good question. It's hard to say exactly because a lot of times, especially like 100 years ago, say, people would discover a dinosaur and give it their own name, and then another person would discover the same dinosaur but think it was a different one and give it their own name. So we're still kind of sifting through all the dinosaur species that we know of, to see if there are any overlaps, because often you don't find an entire skeleton. You might just find like a few bones. And so it's really hard to say sometimes what is a new species and what's not. So, but our ballpark estimate is between 700 and 900 species of dinosaur. That's at least the last that I know of. I could be incorrect, but yeah.
Awesome, thank you. Grant would like to know, actually Grayson, age 9, would like to know, how many individual Triceratops have you studied?
I've just studied so far this one baby, but in like as I research this one baby one, I have to go into like other sizes, other ages of Triceratops to compare. So while my main focus is on this one specimen, I also like go and look at all sorts of specimens of various ages. Some of them are different species, and sometimes I go into a completely different species that's not even a Triceratops, but it is a horned dinosaur, so that I can compare, how they grew. Because for some other species of Chasmosaurian, which is what a Triceratops is, they do have smaller babies that are known, so I can kind of compare and like fill in the blanks sometimes.
Very cool. So let's say you find a dinosaur bone. Like, how do you know what dinosaur it goes to?
Oh, that's it can be really hard sometimes. Like again, there are like lots of species that have been incorrectly cataloged and stuff just because people didn't know what they were. But often it's just from studying the same dinosaur for like years, or just get really starting to know your way around anatomy. Because one thing, if you ever want to become a paleontologist, anatomy is super important. Because I mean, there's a bone, there's a bone called the jugal in a Triceratops. It's kind of the cheekbone, and it's the strangest looking bone, but by now I've looked at it so many times that I could see a jugal lying in the middle of the Badlands and be like, that is a Triceratops jugal. So a lot of it is like knowledge of anatomy, and then also just looking at it over and over until you really know what it is. Yeah.
Very cool. All right, the next question is, this is from Max, age 5. What is the largest ceratopsian?
Oh, that is a good question. I'm actually not sure. They do get really big. Even Triceratops is, it ends up being several tons, much like as big as a school bus sometimes. So, but I don't know. I'll definitely have to look that up.
Sounds good.
But thank you for your
How
question.
many different kinds of ceratopsian are there? Ballpark.
Um, I don't. I don't really know. So, but because part of it is that there are like you can go to the species level, or you can go even farther. So for the species Triceratops, there's still, or the genus, or whatever it is, there's still Triceratops horridus, and there's Triceratops prorsus, and then some people think that there are 8 other kinds of Triceratops, and so sometimes it's really hard to kind of get an exact number because just we don't know yet.
Right.
But
We
yeah.
heard from another paleontologist on this series that there are kind of like 2 schools of thought of dinosaurs. There's like the people who want to blob everything, like things that are similar together, and those that kind of want like every little difference is a different species.
Yeah.
And so yeah, that question is harder than it seems to someone who doesn't study ancient life. Yeah, that's so hard. And even if we do have an answer, like, of course, that's not the answer for what actually existed, just like the stuff we found. So
yeah,
this stuff is complicated. Jonah, age 7, would like to know, where's the best place for me to go and find fossils?
Ooh, it depends on where you are in the world. Again, so the Hell Creek area, which is in Montana near where I live, is great for Cretaceous age dinosaurs and things like that. So you'll find T-Rex, you'll find Triceratops, Ankylosaurus, Pachycephalosaurus, a lot of those things. And generally this middle part of the US is often pretty good, all the way from Canada to Mexico. But it depends on what kind of fossil you're looking for, because on the East Coast, there are lots of awesome trilobites and awesome shells. And even in China, you can find there are feathered dinosaurs. However, I must say that if you're like an amateur paleontologist who wants to go look for fossils, you have to be aware that that the land that you're on, it's legal for you to take fossils, because it's always a very complicated thing to know where you're allowed to take fossils from, because museums often have a lot more permission. But if you go online, you can find a lot of places where you can go out and just search, which is, yeah. And also, a lot of museums will also take out special groups to go find fossils. So I highly encourage that.
Awesome. Thank you for that. Okay, let's take Triceratops off the table for just a moment. If Triceratops did not exist, what would your favorite dinosaur be?
Oh, that's such a good question. It's always super hard to do. There is one dinosaur that I've always loved called Therizinosaurus, and it's one of the weirdest dinosaurs. Imagine a dinosaur that is as big as a T-Rex, and it has claws that are 3 feet long, but it eats plants. And yeah, that's like one of my favorite dinosaurs. It's also a theropod, but it's a herbivorous theropod. So yeah.
That's a great dinosaur. I only learned about that dinosaur like a year ago, and they are the goofiest looking thing I've ever seen. They're so cool.
So funny.
So
tiny little head, huge
silly.
claws.
Yeah, Therizinosaurus. Okay, the next question is from Katie. I'm 10 years old. I love Triceratops. I want to be a paleontologist. What should I do now to prepare?
Oh, such a good question. One thing is, you know, if you ever find someone who you really look up to, like if you find a cool scientist or a paleontologist, try to reach out to them, like send them an email, send them a letter, and they might not reply, but they might, and they can, you know, help you on your journey. Another great thing that I did all the time when I was your age was watch documentaries. Not even just dinosaur documentaries, just all nature documentaries. David Attenborough has great ones. There's a lot of old documentaries like Walking with Dinosaurs that aren't completely 100% accurate anymore, but they're still really great to get into paleontology. Reading is one of the biggest things. There are books for people of all ages who love dinosaurs. So yeah, just look up books, awesome people. When you get a little bit older and you have a museum, you can go and try and volunteer at the museum.
Another thing I'll say is that I think a lot of times when I was growing up, at least, I thought that scientists had some sort of like access to knowledge that I just didn't have. And that's not necessarily true. Like a lot of what I learned as a squid biologist is available in like popular science books. Maybe not to like the molecular level that I know now, but even if you're young, like if you're in high school or middle school, or even before, like there's so much knowledge available out there, especially with the internet being available. Like just read about what you're interested in. And so there's that. If you can't afford to volunteer, that doesn't mean that you can't go forward. There are a lot of programs available that will pay you to do work, even if you don't have experience. And so make sure that you're really digging into the internet to look to see what's available. If you don't find anything, there are scientists on Twitter who are available to help you. So go on there, figure out what kind of scientist you want to be, and then ask them if they know of any programs that are available to pay to help you get into the field that you want to be in. So even though, yeah, if you can afford to volunteer, it makes things easier, to be honest. And that's an inherent problem that we have in science, that we allow people in and people to get experience faster if they can afford to work for free. But just because you can't work for free does not mean that you're not going to get in. Like, persevere. I couldn't volunteer when I was younger, and I'm fine here. I'm here. So, you know, it's just going to take more work, which inherently sucks, but you can do it. Okay, next question for Sophia. Are Triceratops carnivores, herbivores, or omnivores?
So Triceratops are herbivores. But one interesting thing about them is if you look at their teeth, they have super pointy teeth that are kind of shaped like a little pyramid, and then they have two roots. So a lot of times people think, well, a herbivore usually doesn't have such sharp teeth, so how do we know that it wasn't a carnivore? But when Triceratops lived, grasses and stuff had not really started to evolve yet. So a lot of what they had to eat were a lot tougher, maybe like branches or shrubs, that kind of thing. So they actually have really sharp teeth, even though they were herbivores.
Very cool. So we know that some dinosaurs had, and I forget the name,
Oh yeah.
That one.
I always have trouble saying that too.
Parasaurolophus. Okay, so basically those are those dinosaurs. You probably would recognize them. They have like duck bills, and they've got the big horn-looking thing, like a trumpet, basically, on the back of their head. And we know that that's how they make. We predict that that's how they made noise to like reverberate up their head to communicate. Do we know anything about Triceratops communication?
I don't know as much about vocal communication that they would do, but what we do think they had was on their giant frill. It's been hypothesized that there was actually kind of a keratin sheath. So imagine like a cow horn, and then the sheath that they have, or like your fingernails. So some people think that they would have that over their entire frill, and that they had various color markings that allowed other Triceratops to tell what age it was, or if it was a male or a female, and if it was, perhaps they could even tell individuals. So that's that's also something that I'm researching with my baby Triceratops. I study the texture, like the bumpiness of the frill, and we can kind of tell if there was keratin on top of it. So that's one way that we think they might have communicated.
Awesome. The next question that you may or may not know. Is it true that there's still a dinosaur fish in Africa?
Oh, I bet you're talking about the coelacanth.
Yeah.
So, yeah, coelacanths have been around for millions of years. They were around when the dinosaurs lived, and they were for a long time, even until very recently, we had only found fossils of them. And so we thought they had gone completely. A fisherman found one. So now we know that they're still alive. So they're a living fossil, which is really cool.
They're really, really weird and cool. Coelacanths. Oh, cool. Ashley Oki would like to know, I'm a fellow undergrad. How and when did you decide to do science communication?
I think a couple years ago, it was right when I was like completely deciding to go into paleontology in college. And I just decided to start an Instagram account and share paleontology related stuff just for fun. And it did like way better than I ever thought it would. And then when I started working at the museum, my boss was Amy Atwater, who on Instagram is Mary Anning's Revenge. She's a huge paleontology science communication. She's super awesome. And so she really encouraged me to do more with that. And then also just a few months ago, I got another job at the museum, which is their social media coordinator. So all of this has just kind of combined into, I just really want to, share stuff on social media. I want to like share as much as I can and help people learn, because I think it's just such a great way to do it because everyone can look on social media and learn. So I just thought it was a great way to share. Yeah.
Totally agree. Yeah. And if you're looking to get involved in science communication, one piece of advice that I'd give you is just do it. Just try it out.
Yeah.
Like, you don't need to be told to do science communication. Just do it. I think a lot of good practice that you can get early is just like you can kind of find your voice in science communication. You can try things out when your audience isn't huge. The one piece of advice that I'd give you before you really dive in is make sure you're very aware of like ableist language, unintentionally racist language, or intentionally for that matter, just like all of ways that we can communicate as accessibly as possible to everyone and as inclusively as possible. Sometimes like we grow up hearing phrases that we don't even realize are really not okay. And so do that first, and then once you've got that under your belt, really listen to other people as well and just try it out. That's my advice to you. Okay, so actually we've been talking now for 42 minutes, and we try to keep these sessions to 45. And so let me see if there's any other pressing questions. Let's do 2 more just because we started a bit late. The first question's from Gavin. What animals are the closest relatives of Triceratops?
Okay, if we're going to living animals, there's obviously birds, which are still dinosaurs. They're avian dinosaurs. However, birds aren't directly descended from dinosaurs like Triceratops. Dinosaurs, the Dinosauria, the clade, is divided into 2 main groups, which is Saurischians and Ornithischians. And Ornithischians are dinosaurs like Triceratops, duck-billed dinosaurs, ankylosaurs, a lot of that sort of thing. And then Saurischians include theropods like T-Rex, Archaeopteryx, and they also include sauropods, so think Diplodocus or those huge long-necked dinosaurs. So Triceratops is in this group, and all of the dinosaurs in the Ornithischian group died out when the dinosaurs died out about 66 million years ago. But the dinosaurs that we have today, the birds, descended from the Saurischian group, and they're called avian dinosaurs. So even though we don't have something in the Ornithischian group, the closest thing that we have today to a Triceratops is a chicken, just because they're dinosaurs. Yeah.
Birds are dinosaurs. So true.
Yep.
All right. And then one last audience question. How do we know what dinosaurs look like when we only have the bones?
There are lots of ways to tell. Recently, there have been a lot of new ways to tell how dinosaurs looked like using computer simulations where they would take all the fossils and then, put them together. And on the fossils, sometimes you can see tiny marks where muscles attached, and you can put that in the computer and see how they moved. In some dinosaurs, we've even found fossilized skin or imprints of skin.
Wow.
And another way that we can tell what dinosaurs looked like is by comparing them to things that we know of today. So dinosaurs, obviously we compare dinosaurs to birds a lot. And now that we have fossilized feathers, we know that they had feathers. We also compare them to reptiles because even though they are not reptiles, they are very similar. Yeah, those are 2 ways, or a few ways. Yeah.
So wait, did you just say that dinosaurs are not reptiles?
So it's a little bit complicated. Dinosaurs are in the group Reptilia,
Okay.
but they are not actually the reptiles that we think of today. Like dinosaurs are not crocodiles, they're not lizards, they're birds. Right. But if you get really technical, birds would also be Reptilia.
Reptilia. Gotcha.
But they're obviously reptiles. Yeah.
Right. Okay, great. All right. So we always ask everybody the same 2 questions at the end of sessions. The first question is, what do you wish everybody in the world knew about your area, with relation to your area of expertise? And then the second question is, what is something that you wish everybody in the world knew about literally anything? It can be as small and silly or big and insignificant, or and significant as you'd like.
Oh, those are really good questions. I think about paleontology. This is kind of for everyone in the world, but also for people who want to be paleontologists. I'd want them to know that even though paleontology has been around for hundreds of years, there's still like so much to find out. We still don't know so much, and honestly, in all areas of science. So like I always would get discouraged because I would think there's no more new dinosaurs to find, or there's no more new things to find out about the dinosaurs. But I just want everyone to know that there's always more to find out. And about anything in the world, that's a very hard one. I think if I wanted everyone in the world to know something, it would be, that's such a hard question.
I know. It is hard.
Every time I think of it, I just keep going back to prehistoric creatures because that's all I think about. I would want everyone to know that this is going to be related to paleontology just because it's just a silly thing, that horses originally evolved in North America and then completely went extinct. But then when people started rehabitating North America, they brought horses with them. But to a paleontologist way, way in the future, the geologic record is so unexact that they would think that horses never disappeared from North America.
Whoa.
Yeah, that's just, I don't know.
Wild.
Something fun.
Do you know how much time went between the extinction of like the OG horse and when colonizers brought horses over?
I'm not sure of the exact time, but probably about 20,000 years, I'd have to say.
It's really not that long. Not that long.
Yeah.
Geologic time. Well.
Yeah, geologic time, the blink of an eye. But to us, that's forever.
It's a long time. Well, that is a very cool fact. That's a great thing for us all to know. That's wild. That's so cool. Okay. You came up with a good answer. Even if it was hard, you got it. All right. So thank you everyone for joining us. I would like to say that if this is your first time coming to Skype a Scientist Live, please give us the benefit of the doubt. It's normally not this much of a dumpster fire, but Sophia, you did great. Thank you so much for all the information that you told us. Normally it goes a little smoother. I normally don't have like a UPS delivery in the middle of it, and Lord help us. So thank you for coming. Next week, we are going to be talking about all kinds of cool stuff. We're going to be exploring diversity and artificial intelligence on June 8th at 1 p.m. On June 9th, we're going to be talking about designing missions to the moon and Mars. On the 10th, we're going to be talking about space fireworks. So basically these events that happen out in space that make it look like there are fireworks happening. And then on Friday, the 12th, we're going to be talking with Riley Black, who has written a lot of really popular pop sci books, all talking about how to be a science writer. Riley's written some very awesome books like Skeleton Key. My gosh, I can picture the cover perfectly. And My Friend the Brontosaurus, among others. And also has a really fantastic blog, had a blog on Scientific American for many years. So that's gonna be a good one. They're all gonna be good ones. It's gonna be great. So I hope we all see you next week. You can always find out what is going on with Skype a Scientist Live on skypeascientist.com/ well, just look at the live stream bar. I hope you all have a good weekend and continue to fight racism all the time. Have a great weekend.